Hey there, glad you made it. Tonight, we're going deep into one of the most powerful battles, about a being so massive and so dangerous that the gods had to bury him under mountains just to keep the world safe. I bring you the entire battle between Typhoeus and Zeus, explained in one smooth, relaxing flow with no interruptions, perfect for unwinding or falling asleep. If you enjoy drifting off to mythic stories like this, subscribing means you'll have a new story every night to fall asleep to. Typhoeus was born from the depths of the earth, a child of the pit of Tartaros and the ancient earth itself. A creature not born like others, but formed through a mingling of primal forces older than the gods. From the moment of his birth, the world trembled at his presence, for his shape was not meant for peace. He was a towering being, a storm giant whose head brushed against the stars and whose very breath carried the heat of fire and the force of the winds. From the waist up, he had the shape of a man, but one more terrifying than any mortal or god, with arms that stretched wide and hands made of serpents. Each of his fingers ended in a serpent's head, hissing and striking in all directions, so that 100 heads writhed where fingers should be. Some said he had 200 hands, each one with 50 serpent-headed fingers, multiplying his threat and making him an unstoppable force of destruction. His beard was thick and unkempt, clotted with filth, and his ears were long and pointed like a wild beast. Fire blazed in his eyes, not just light, but a consuming flame that turned all they looked upon into ash. His voice, when he chose to speak or scream, was not one but many, 100 heads each with their own roar, shriek, howl, and hiss. Voices of bulls and lions, boars and serpents, the snarls of leopards, and one human voice among them all, cold and deep and filled with rage. Where his legs should have been were not limbs of bone and flesh, but coiled serpents, slithering and striking, lifting his vast weight as he moved with impossible speed for one so large. From his shoulders to his ankles, wings stretched wide, shadowing the land below and blotting out the sun whenever he passed. With his monstrous form complete, Typhoeus rose not to dwell in quiet, but to lay siege to the heavens themselves. The skies darkened with his ascent, and storms followed in his wake. He hurled rocks that glowed red from the fire boiling in his chest, spitting flame from his mouth with each breath. He tore up mountains and threw them into the sky, challenging the highest gods for their thrones. His fury was not blind. He was focused on overthrowing all divine order and placing himself above all. He did not merely rise against the gods, he hunted them. The heavens, once still and golden, were filled with shrieking winds, crashing thunder, and fire that rained from above and below. The stars blinked out as he grew closer. Lightning struck, not from clouds, but from the hands of the one who would meet him in battle, Zeus, the king of the gods. The two forces clashed in the sky and in the deep, the light of thunderbolts meeting the fire of the volcano demon. Every blow that Zeus struck shook the foundations of the world, and every return of Typhoeus sent shockwaves that split the mountains and churned the seas. Their battle raged across the earth, and for a time even the gods faltered, driven into hiding by the terror Typhoeus brought with him. But Zeus did not fall back. He stood alone, wielding the thunder, hurling bolt after bolt until the fire of Typhoeus dimmed and his great form stumbled. But even in defeat, the monster did not fall quietly. He roared so loudly that the earth cracked, and he reached out to drag Zeus down with him. Yet Zeus struck again, one final blow that sent Typhoeus hurtling into the depths of Tartaros, that dark and hollow pit beneath the world, deeper than any mortal could dream, a prison built for creatures that should never walk the earth. And there he was cast, beneath the heavy weight of Mount Aetna, buried under rock and ash and flame, trapped but not silenced. From that place, his fury continued to rise, no longer in the form of a marching giant, but as the force of the volcano, the breath of the hurricane, the fire that boiled the sea and split the stone. Later poets saw the volcanoes of Sicily and knew his prison lay beneath. They saw the smoke that curled from the mountaintop, the ground that shook, and the red-hot rivers that burst from the earth. And they knew Typhoeus still lived, still thrashed in anger, still dreamed of breaking free. In this way, he became not just a monster of the past, but a source of storms and quakes and eruptions, a force of nature caged but alive. In this form, some called him Enceladus, the giant buried under the earth, his breath the cause of smoke, his wrath the reason the land trembled. Others remembered him as a father too, not just of ruin, but of wind itself. The harsh winds that screamed across mountains and tore through valleys were born of his breath. Not the soft winds that brought spring or the cool breeze of autumn, but the harsh, howling gales that flattened trees and shattered ships, the harpies who snatched and howled, cruel and sudden. These were his children. And though some winds, the ones that brought life and order, were not of his line, those that brought ruin bore his fury. Some said he came not from Tartarus and Gaia alone, but from Hera herself, born in her anger, created not through union, but through rage. Hera, furious that Zeus had birthed Athena alone, brought forth Typhoeus without a father, a monster born from pure wrath. And thus his purpose was vengeance from the moment he opened his eyes. Others saw him dwelling in the caves of Cilicia, a shadow in the mountains, his body vast enough to stretch from land to land, always burning, always watching. At times, he rose in memory, in the flickering of lightning and the crack of thunder, in the ash that drifted like snow, in the flame that burst from hillsides. He was more than body. He was storm and fury, earthquake and fire. Even after being struck down, even after his 100 voices were silenced in the earth, his presence never left. The myths could not forget him, for every time the sky darkened with rage or the mountains split with flame, the world whispered his name, and the memory of the monstrous Typhoeus stirred again in the darkness. Mount Aetna stood vast and unyielding, its peak crowned with smoke and fire, and deep within its blazing heart was the workshop of Hephaestus, the divine smith, where hammers rang and flames danced in eternal motion. It was under this mountain, in the dark and trembling ground, that the echoes of an ancient wrath still stirred, the wrath of Typhoeus, the monstrous child of earth and pit, a being born not only of darkness, but of deep divine anger and sacred defiance. When Zeus had cast down the Titans and peace seemed to settle over the skies, earth, vast and ancient, united with the great abyss below, stirred by the power of love through golden Aphrodite, and gave birth to her youngest and most terrifying child. This child was not like the others. This was Typhoeus, and his coming shook the world. From the moment he entered existence, it was clear he was made not just of flesh and fire, but of purpose. His very form, a challenge to the might of the heavens. His mother had created him to be the last and greatest force against the order Zeus had brought. But his story did not end in his making, for there were deeper roots to his being, found not only in the earth's desire, but in the fury of Hera, queen of the gods, whose wrath had burned brighter than the fires of Olympus when Zeus birthed Athena from his own head. That day, Hera's pride was wounded, and in front of the other gods, she vowed that she too would bear a child, not by union, but by sheer will and divine force. She withdrew in anger, away from Zeus and his thunder, and struck the ground with her hand, calling out to earth and sky, to the Titans far below in the deep, to grant her a child not lesser but greater, a being of such strength that even the all-seeing one who ruled the skies would be cast down. The ground trembled beneath her cry, and Gaia heard the queen's plea, moved by her rage, and from that plea, life began to stir in the deep. The months passed as the earth turned, and when the seasons returned and the time came, Hera brought forth a child, not like the gods, nor like men, but something beyond. This was Typhoeus, cruel and fierce, whose fate would be to plague all who lived. He was a creature not of beauty or balance, but of raw power and terror. Without hesitation, Hera took the newborn force and gave him into the arms of the Trichina, a monstrous female dragon who lived near Delphi, whose coils wrapped around the sacred places of the world, and whose venom could rot the strongest of heroes. She raised him far from the other gods, hidden in places where sunlight barely reached, nurturing his fury, feeding his strength, teaching him nothing of peace or law, but only the hunger to rise and consume. Typhoeus grew quickly, not bound by the limits of mortal life. His form swelled until it shadowed the land, his wings spreading wide like storm clouds, his body rising so high that his head reached the stars and his voice carried like thunder. Where he walked, the skies darkened, and where he roared, mountains cracked. His presence was a storm, a quake, a fire all at once. Later, as poets and seers looked back, at his fury, they connected him not just with the lands of fire, but with the lands of sand, saying he once chased the gods so far across the world that they fled to Egypt. And in that foreign land, so afraid were they that they changed their forms, no longer gods of might and form but beasts, each one taking the shape of an animal to escape his wrath. All except Zeus, who would never run, and Athena, who would never yield. Together they stood while the others hid, waiting for the moment when Typhoeus would come to strike, and the earth would quake under his charge. But though Typhoeus was raised in darkness and built from rage, he was not born to rule. His power was immense, but it was not greater than the will of the one who held the thunder. A great battle came, fierce and world-shaking, and though Typhoeus hurled mountains and flame, though he brought chaos to sky and sea, he could not break the lightning. Zeus cast him down, struck him with a bolt so bright that night turned to day, and forced him deep into the earth. There, under the weight of Mount Etna, Typhoeus was bound. The very mountain served as his prison, but it could not silence him. For even now, when the volcano shudders, when fire spills from its heart and smoke blackens the sky, it is said to be the voice of Typhoeus, still writhing, still burning, still dreaming of freedom. The gods had won, but they could not erase him. His breath became the storms, his hands the winds, his rage the fire beneath the land. And so, the monstrous son of earth and divine vengeance remained, his fury trapped beneath the mountain, where the divine smith forged the weapons of the gods. The echoes of his cries rising through the cracks of the earth, reminding all who listen that beneath every calm lies a buried storm. Typhoeus, born of deep earth and the dark pit, was no ordinary creature, for his coming into the world was driven by wrath and vengeance, and he was shaped by the oldest forces known to gods or men. This monstrous being brought endless trouble to the famed tribes of men, for his power was like no other, and his fury knew no limit. He was not hidden in the open lands, but raised deep in a far-famed cave of Cilicia, where the rocks echoed his breath and the winds trembled with his roars. From that remote and dark shelter, his strength grew. not slowly like that of mortals, but swiftly, as if the earth itself poured every drop of its might into him. There, in the silence of the cave, sheltered by shadow and smoke, his form took shape, terrifying and beyond the grasp of the mind. While some said he was born of the earth alone, others whispered that Hera herself, out of scorn for her husband, bore him without a father, crafting a child to rival the king of the gods in might and terror. No matter his birth, all agreed that he was the last and greatest threat the gods would ever face, a true child of vengeance and the underworld. The earth groaned at his birth, for even she feared what she had unleashed. As Typhoeus stood, the world seemed to tilt under his weight, and his breath was enough to stir great storms. He was called Earthborn by those who saw the mountains shake with his steps and the sky darken with his wings. The tale told that after the fall of the giants, Earth, enraged by the destruction of her children, united with the dark depths of Tartaros and gave birth to this creature in Cilicia. He was not simply large. He was the largest of all, both in body and in strength, a towering figure whose shadow stretched across land and sea. Typhoeus was not just immense, but made of horrors woven together. He was a mix of man and beast, but not in the way of centaurs or other monsters. His limbs were mighty, his hands huge and filled with strength, built for the work of destruction. His feet never tired, carrying him across great distances with ease. But from his shoulders the nightmare began. 100 dragon serpent heads burst forth, each writhing and alive, their tongues dark and flickering, tasting the air, whispering threats in voices that were never still. The eyes of these heads glowed with fire deep within their lids, always burning, always watching, never resting. Flames leapt from them when they stared, and the light that burst forth was not warm but cruel, filled with hate. Each head had a voice, and none were alike. Sometimes they spoke in clear speech, as if gods themselves had lent their language to the beast. Other times the voices turned to howls, deep, wild, and full of fury. One head might bellow like a bull, proud and unchained. Another roared like a lion, fierce and without mercy. Yet another barked like a dog, sharp and sudden, leaving shivers in the bones of all who heard. Sometimes there were whistles, so high and strange that mountains echoed them back in confusion, and trees bent under the sound. The air around him changed with every breath, thick with heat and noise, so that no peace could exist near him. The coiling of his body sent dust rising from the earth, and wherever he moved, land twisted in pain. He was not a creature of form and balance, but a storm made flesh, a fury shaped in limbs and fire, a voice of the earth's darkest wish. The ancient poets did not all agree on who brought Typhoeus into being, but they all spoke of his horror. One said he was the child of Tartaros and Gaia, another that Tartarus gave birth to him by Tartara herself, making him a creature of darkness twice over. Yet another claimed that Hera, in her fury, shaped him with no need of a consort, making a son to rival the heavens from nothing but rage and prayer. Regardless of his true origin, all tales led to the same truth. He came from the lowest depths, the deep heart of the earth, and he rose with a force that shook the heavens. When he emerged, it was as though the earth cracked open to release him, and from the split rose his towering frame. He was called Earthborn by many, and the name fit him well, for no creature ever reflected the fury of the land as he did. When he walked, it was like a mountain moving, and when he roared, the sky trembled. The moon, they said, marked certain days as unlucky, and one of these was the day when, with monstrous labor, the earth gave birth not only to giants like Typhoeus and Iapetus, but also to the savage Typhoeus. His name echoed through time as a warning, not a story. From his 100 heads to his terrible sounds, from his burning eyes to his coiling limbs, from his strength to his hatred, he was a being that nothing could contain easily. Even the gods feared him, for he stood against them all, alone but filled with power. His jaws hissed with horror, and the light that came from his eyes was not of the stars, but something older and darker. He resisted not with cunning, but with sheer might, 100 heads striking in all directions, each one blazing, each one roaring, each one singing the doom of all who stood before him. His 100 mouths were filled with chaos, his tongues with venom, his thoughts with storm. And when he came forth from his cave in Cilicia, the whole world seemed to brace itself for what might follow. He was not like the other monsters. He was their king, their final form, the nightmare that had waited through time to rise. And so, from the deep darkness, from the fury of a goddess, from the love of earth and the depth of the pit, came Typhoeus, a force too large for land, too fierce for sky, too wild for sea, and his name became a word that carried fire, wind, and fear wherever it was spoken. Typhon was unlike anything the world had ever seen, a monstrous being born from the depths of earth herself, crafted with a size and strength that went beyond any creature before him. He was a mixture of man and beast, towering so high that even the great mountains seemed small beside him, and his head often rose so far it brushed the very stars. His form was partly human, but only down to his thighs, and even that part was stretched beyond normal shape. Limbs vast and shoulders wide, the kind of body that seemed carved out of the sky itself. One of his arms could reach all the way to the western edge of the world, while the other extended to the eastern horizon, as if his very span could embrace the entire earth in a single motion. But attached to these long, terrible arms were not hands in the usual form, but 100 serpent heads, each alive, each hissing and writhing, each filled with venom and rage. From his thighs downward, he was no longer man at all, but a coiling mass of huge vipers, twisted and slithering, their bodies so long they rose back up to his head, where they continued to hiss in unison with the others, creating a terrible harmony of sound that echoed across the sky. His whole body was covered in wings, great flapping things that moved not with the wind but with fury. And when he flew or rose, storms followed. His hair, tangled and thick, flowed from his head and cheeks in dirty, matted strands, always caught in the wind, carrying the dust and fire of the earth with them. And when his eyes opened, they shone with a light that was not of the sun or moon, but of something deeper, something older, a light of burning fire that flashed with anger and destruction. Such was his appearance as he rose from the earth and began his assault on the heavens. With every step, the world trembled. He hurled red-hot rocks into the air, throwing them so high that they seemed to challenge the stars themselves. His mouth opened wide, and from it came a storm of fire that boiled and roared, the flames twisting in the air like serpents of their own. His cries were a mix of hisses and shouts, an unnatural sound that made mountains quake and rivers change their course. And there, carved on the ancient throne of a god in the land of Sparta, the figure of this monstrous being was shown beside the creature known as Echidna, both serpent-tailed, both terrible, standing across from beings of the sea. His presence in such sacred places was a reminder of what he had been. A force so great that even the divine could not ignore him. He was born of the earth, and all his features spoke of it. His shape was outlandish, strange beyond reason, filled with parts that belonged to many creatures, yet came together in a single terrifying whole. From his body grew not just many heads, but many hands, wings, and limbs, a chaotic collection of parts that moved as one. From his thighs emerged huge coils of serpents, thick and strong, each hissing as they wound themselves into the sky. His voice was a chorus of roaring sounds, not just one cry, but all the roars of wild beasts combined. His throat produced the sounds of bulls, lions, boars, leopards, and hounds, all mixed together, all layered on top of the hissing of the snakes that crowned his form. The dragon heads that sprouted from his shoulders numbered in the hundreds, each one alive and moving, each one full of its own hunger and rage. They flicked their tongues, spewed venom, and added to the nightmare that was Typhon. He did not merely walk, he climbed, he stormed, he invaded the sky itself. His snake legs trailed behind him as he lifted himself into the clouds, spreading his many arms wide, so wide that they blocked the sun and cast shadows across the earth. As he rose, he tilted his head, and his flashing eyebrows pulled low with fury. Every strand of hair on his head, each one soaked in filth and dust, let loose a stream of viper poison. The poison soaked the hills, running in thick streams down the slopes, burning whatever they touched. He picked up boulders and flung them high, launching himself toward the very peak of the god's mountain. His snaky limbs left crooked trails behind him, dragging across the ground as he moved. With every breath, he spat out clouds of poison, and these clouds flooded valleys and filled the air with choking fumes. From the bristles that covered his high head, more fountains of venom spilled, flowing like rivers of sickness that soaked the land. As he marched, the very ground beneath him collapsed. The earth, which had given him life, could barely hold his weight. The steady land of Cilicia, where he had first been formed, groaned and cracked beneath his dragon-like feet, shaking to its core with every thunderous step. The solid rock trembled, the hills trembled, and the deep foundation of the land shifted under the monstrous pressure. He was not a creature of stillness or silence. He was motion and sound, terror made real, a body formed to rage. His war cry was like no other. Not one sound, but all the cries of the wild world roared at once. The snakes that grew from him slithered over every other beastly part, licking the manes of lions, curling around the horns of bulls, flicking their thin, venom-dripping tongues at the faces of boars. The foam and spittle from those jaws mixed with the poison, creating a mixture of death that poured from his mouth, eyes, and hair. He did not just walk across the earth. He marched with the fury of a living mountain. He did not merely breathe, but every exhale was a storm. Every glance from his eyes was a blaze. Every motion of his arms sent winds howling. And so, from the coils of his feet to the highest point of his head, Typhon towered, moved, and struck. He rose from the earth and threatened the sky, his body shaking the ground, his wings tearing the air, his cries flooding the mountains, until even the land beneath him wished to cast him back into the pit from which he came. Many armed Typhoeus rose with fury, burning in every limb, his countless voices rumbling through the sky and sea as he roared his challenge to the king of the gods, his words rolling like thunder across the land and echoing as far as the deep streams of Oceanus, where the world's waters flowed in an endless ring. From all the throats of his many heads came a terrible chorus, a sound like no other, a clash of wild cries that could never be made by a single creature. Because Typhoeus did not have one voice but many, and each head had its own tongue and its own sound. The air trembled with the yowling of wolves, sharp and cold like the winds that cut through mountains. The roaring of lions, deep and full of rage. The grunting of boars, rough and relentless. The lowing of cattle drawn from the wide fields. the hissing of serpents, long and sharp like the edge of blades, the bold, rapid yapping of leopards ready to strike, the fierce snapping jaws of rearing bears. And through it all ran the fury of the divine, a wrath that did not belong to any beast of the earth but was born from something older, deeper, and more terrible. In the center of this monstrous storm of noise was his man-shaped head, a towering figure of wrath and strength. And from that mouth came clear words of rage, threats shouted directly against the heavens, a defiance hurled at the ruler above, daring him to meet such fury. Typhoeus did not come quietly, nor was he alone in his legacy, for he was not just a monster born of earth and storm, but also the father of many others, those who would bring fear to both gods and men. It was said that Typhoeus, terrible and wild, full of outrage and without law, took to himself the glancing-eyed one known for her monstrous shape and deadly power, and with her he fathered a brood of horrors. From their union came beings that were unlike any born before, creatures made to terrify and destroy. The firstborn was a hound, fierce and loyal, who guarded the distant cattle of a giant king. But this was no ordinary dog. It was Orthos, a beast that no man could tame. Then came the second, more monstrous still, a flesh-eating hound with 50 heads, whose bark echoed through the realm of the dead. This was Cerberus, the relentless guardian of the underworld, whose voices were like thunder and whose grip could not be broken. Next was a creature of even greater terror, a many-headed serpent raised in a dark swamp, fed and watched over by the queen of the gods herself, out of spite and fury. This was the Hydra, whose breath was poison and whose blood could melt metal, and whenever one head was cut, more grew in its place. Then came another horror, one that combined fire and flesh, a creature with 3 heads, one of a lion, burning with rage, one of a goat, twisted and screaming, and one of a serpent, long and cruel, and from all of them poured burning flame. This was the Chimera, whose very breath was death, and whose feet moved faster than the eye could follow. Though it met its end at the hands of a winged horse and a hero, its birth had already scorched the land. From Typhoeus and his monstrous consort came more children still. One was a guardian, not of treasure, but of the golden apples hidden in a far garden, a serpent so large and so strange that it bore 100 heads, each one able to speak in a different voice, each one able to sing a different song of death. No blade could pass it, and its eyes saw everything. Another child was a great eagle, fierce and eternal, sent not to hunt prey, but to feast forever on the punishment of a chained god, devouring his flesh day after day as he suffered beneath the sky. And then came yet another horror, one that did not bring fire or fangs, but riddles and doom. This was the Sphinx, sent to punish a city, her wings wide, her face cruel, and her voice full of questions no one could answer. With every wrong answer, death followed, and the city suffered long beneath her shadow. All these beings, each terrifying in their own right, shared the same parentage, all born from the same monstrous blood, all tied to the fury of the earth and the endless storm. Their births were not the start of peace, but of trial after trial, each one sent forth to test the courage of mortals and the strength of the divine. Where Typhoeus went, the ground cracked beneath him, and from his line came beings who cracked the will of men and gods alike. The fire that boiled in his throat lived on in the breath of his daughter. The strength that burned in his limbs roared through the hound that guarded the gate of the dead. The poison that ran in his many heads found new life in the Hydra's blood. The cunning and silence of his coiling body could be seen in the Sphinx, who needed no claws to kill. And even after the great monster was thrown down, Even after his body was buried and the sky cleared, the children of his rage lived on, each one a spark of the fury he once brought to the world, each one a living reminder that the storm, though buried, was never truly gone. Theseus slew the sow at Crommyon, a wild and dreadful creature known as fire, named after the old woman who raised it. Yet some claim that this beast was more than just a wild animal, that it was born from the same dark blood as many of the earth's other monsters, the offspring of Echidna and Typhon, whose children were many and whose forms were always strange and fearsome. The blood of Typhon ran through monsters that roamed both land and sea, and it was said that even Amycus, the harsh king who ruled Mysia and challenged strangers to deadly boxing matches, reminded all who looked upon him of the savage nature of Typhoeus' monstrous line. There was something in his brute strength and ruthless eyes that brought to mind the wild, lawless shape of that ancient, storm-born being, as if the fury of Typhon had passed into mortal veins. Far to the east, on the shadowy slopes of the Caucasus Mountains, there lay another sign of Typhon's presence, a place where Gaia herself, the earth, had brought forth a great serpent, a sleepless and undying dragon to guard the golden fleece in the land of Colchis. It was told that here, by the jagged rocks where the sky and mountains met, Typhon had once lifted his hands in rebellion, challenging the ruler of the heavens, and it was here he had been struck down, a bolt of lightning piercing his head, and from that wound warm blood had flowed into the stone. That place, scorched and broken, became sacred and feared, forever tied to his fall. In the deep gloom near the borders of eternal night, in a cavern where no light entered, the monstrous hound Cerberus was said to have been born. This fearsome creature, with multiple heads and a hunger for raw flesh, was the child of Typhon and Echidna, and it was just one of the many terrors brought forth from that cursed union. Near the high cliffs of Troy, in a cave beneath an unscalable wall of rock, two sea dragons coiled in the shadows, terrifying and silent, their massive forms sliding through the sea and the dark, another of the deadly brood of Typhon, hiding and waiting for the moment to strike. The line of monsters did not end there, for it was said that many others had come from Typhon and his mate, beings of such unnatural shape and strength that their names stirred fear even in the hearts of the brave. From their union came the Gorgon, whose gaze turned men to stone, and the Hydra, with its 9 deadly heads that grew back twice as strong when cut. Cerberus guarded the underworld. The dragon of Colchis guarded the fleece, and another dragon guarded the golden apples of the Hesperides in a land beyond the great river Oceanus. There was also Scylla, a creature whose upper body was that of a woman, but whose lower body gave way to 6 snapping dog heads, each with razor teeth and endless hunger, each one striking out from her body to drag sailors into the sea. The Chimera, too, was among their dreadful offspring, a beast with the head of a lion at the front, a goat's head rising from its back, and a serpent for a tail, all breathing fire, all filled with rage. The Sphinx, who sat on the roads of Thebes, asking her riddles and killing those who failed to answer, was also of their blood, her cleverness and cruelty reflecting the madness of her lineage. These monsters, all born of Typhon and Echidna, were not simple beasts. They were trials sent into the world to test the strength and wit of gods and mortals alike. Their forms were strange, their power unnatural, and their cruelty unmatched. They were not shaped by time or nature, but by the mingling of divine fury and earthly chaos. It was said that even the eagle that punished the chained Titan by eating his ever-regenerating liver might have been born from Typhon and Echidna, Some said it came from Earth and the dark pit, others that it sprang from Typhon's dreadful brood, a winged reminder of suffering sent each day to feast and each night to wait again. And there was still more, for the winged harpies, shrieking and foul, once fled from the wrath of the sons of the north wind. In their panic they cried out for their father, and it was said that Typhon himself rose in answer, his form cloaked in shadow, and with him he brought the darkness, filling the space between earth and sky. From the heart of that gloom his voice rang out, a voice so loud and deep that the air itself seemed to tremble. He did not rage as before, but spoke with force, declaring that the chase had gone far enough, commanding that the pursuit end. For even though Zeus ruled with thunder and the mighty shield, there were still limits to the wrath he allowed his servants. Typhon's voice rolled over sea and land, a sound that shook the hearts of those who heard it and reminded them that though he had once fallen, though he had once been struck down and buried, his presence was not erased. His children still walked the world, still breathed, still struck terror, and his shadow still lingered wherever mountains smoked and serpents hissed. The monsters born from him and his mate filled every dark corner of the world, each one a living echo of the storm that once dared rise against the gods. Wrath burned across the heavens and the earth as the one born of earth and the pit rose in his full strength, shaking the world with his many limbs, his voice a storm of animal cries and wild sounds. And the 100 snakeheads upon his shoulders hissed and howled, tongues flicking dark and venomous, while fire blazed from every eye under heavy lids that never blinked. From deep within each monstrous head came a different roar, a bull's bellow proud and defiant, a lion's growl without mercy, the sharp barking of hounds ready to strike, the eerie whistling that bounced between mountains and echoed in empty valleys. Each sound pouring from mouths wide with flame, a chorus of terror that no mortal or god could silence. His arms were massive and filled with strength beyond understanding, and his tireless feet struck the ground with such force that each step sent tremors racing outward, cracking the stone beneath him. His entire form blazed, the fire of his fury radiating outward until even the air shimmered and the sea hissed as his breath touched it. He was the last and greatest child of earth, born not in peace but in fury, shaped by the power of love through golden Aphrodite, yet meant for destruction. His presence alone enough to drive the sky into convulsions and make the mountains groan beneath his weight. And that day would have marked the end of the divine order, the moment when this monstrous child of earth would have risen above all others, taking dominion not only over the lands of men, but the high thrones of the gods. Had not the Lord of Thunder seen the threat for what it was? Zeus, sharp of eye and swift of will, stood firm, and from the depths of heaven he raised his hand and clapped thunder so loud it broke the silence of the cosmos. The sound echoed across every corner of the world. The earth cried out, the heavens split with white flame, the sea rolled and raged, and the streams of Oceanus churned and twisted in their eternal paths. Even the hidden chambers beneath the world stirred as the blast tore through them. The weight of Olympus trembled under the footsteps of its king as he marched forward, the sky above blazing with light and sound, and the solid earth beneath cracking under the pressure of the battle. The sea, black and deep, reflected the fury of both combatants. From one side, the lightning of the king streaked downward, piercing the waves and lighting the depths. From the other, the monster's flame licked the sky, a firestorm rising from his breath, scorching clouds and boiling the winds. Bolts of fire met clouds of heat, and the clash boiled the sea until towering waves rose and crashed upon the shores and promontories, battering the land in wild rhythm with the fury of the fight. mountains shook to their roots, the earth twisting and moaning beneath the pressure. Even the underworld felt it. There, far below where the dead slept, Hades himself shuddered, sensing the great upheaval in the world above. And farther still, deep within Tartaros, where the Titans dwelt beside their fallen king, even they trembled at the noise and light that filtered down through stone and flame. The unending clamor of powers so great they echoed into the roots of creation itself. The sky darkened with fire, not from the sun, but from the wrath of Typhoeus and the rage of Zeus. The king hurled bolt after bolt, his thunder growing sharper, harder, louder, a rolling wave of sound and power that struck the earth with endless force. Typhoeus answered not with words, but with flame, with breath so hot it turned wind to ash and lit the seas with a terrible glow. His 100 heads roared together, spitting fire and storm, their voices screaming in every tone of beast and terror. The space between heaven and earth became a battlefield, not of armies, but of elements, thunder and fire, sky and storm, strength and defiance. The battle raged without pause, neither yielding, the skies above writhing in smoke and light, the ground below cracking, oceans rising and falling in great pulses. But the god did not falter. He stepped forward again and again, each stride shaking Olympus and the lands below, each blast of thunder louder than the last. And when he hurled his greatest bolt, it was as if all the light of day and all the weight of the storm had been captured in that single strike. It shot down with a force that split the clouds, pierced the fire, and struck the beast full in the head, the very place where warm blood had once fallen upon the mountain slopes after the first rebellion. This time, it was not a wound left to bleed, but a mark of defeat. The roar that followed shook even the stars. The monster reeled, all 100 heads crying out at once, their flames flickering, their tongues curling, their eyes dimming as the force of the sky bore down upon them. The sea stopped boiling, the earth slowed its shuddering, the fires on the peaks dimmed, and even the winds calmed as the monster began to fall. The strength of his limbs failing, his wings no longer able to lift his immense form. With a final cry that mingled the screams of every beast, the sound of every terror, he crumpled, shaking the mountains one last time, and the light of his fury was swallowed by the earth. The king had stood firm, the storm was over, the world still stood, and the throne of heaven remained. But the scorch marks of that day never faded, etched into sea and sky and stone, a memory of a battle where even the deepest foundations had trembled, and the king of gods had faced the fury of earth's last, most terrible child. Strength surged through the hand that held the sky's fury, and seizing the weapons that shook the cosmos, thunder, lightning, and the blinding thunderbolt, he leapt from the heights of Olympus with purpose as bright as flame, and came down with a force that split air and stone. He struck without pause, sending fire crashing into the many dreadful heads of the monster who had dared rise against him, each head a horror, each mouth spewing defiance, each eye filled with searing hatred, but all of them now burning in the blaze of the god's fury. The sky screamed and the earth buckled as the storm took its course. When the last strike fell and the final roar echoed across the heavens, the great monster was brought low. Typhoeus fell in ruin, and his massive body crashed with a weight that made the very bones of the earth tremble. The gigantic land groaned beneath the broken mass of its own sun, as fire spread like a red storm through the steep, dark forests of the mountains, lighting tree and stone alike, as if the world itself had caught fire from the touch of the divine. The heat that came from the blow was not like the sun or the hearth, but like the core of the world had opened, like every breath of flame from the heavens had fallen in one single moment. A great portion of the earth, ancient and wide, melted as the fires of the battle raced through it, not slowly, but all at once, in a wave of heat that stripped away mountains and forests and turned stone to liquid. The melting was so complete it resembled the craftsman's crucible, where tin, soft and bright, liquefies under the grooves and flames, or like the iron, proud and strong, forced to surrender under the fire, worked deep in the mountain by the hand of Hephaestus, whose forge glows inside the sacred halls of the earth. Such was the fire on that day. The earth itself melted, not just cracked or burned, but gave way and turned to flowing light. And when the fire had done its work and the victory was clear, the king of the gods, filled with a storming anger that had not yet calmed, cast the broken form of Typhoeus down into Tartaros, deep and wide, the prison of the forgotten, the place where no light dwells. But though the monster had fallen, not all of him was gone. From Typhoeus came the winds, those wild forces that blow across sea and land. Not all, for some were kind, born of other gods, the south wind, the north wind, and the gentle west wind. These were calm, and when they passed, the earth was refreshed, and the crops flourished, and the sails of ships filled gently. But the others, those that came with no warning and no reason, were born of Typhoeus. These were the winds that struck with no mercy, the winds that howled and tore, the ones that lashed the seas with foam and fury, tearing ships from their courses and flinging them into rocks, winds that scattered men into the deep when no help could find them. They came not with order, but with chaos, blowing differently with every season, never still, never known, and always dangerous. They were a curse upon the sea, and those who met them in open waters had no recourse, no way to fight, only prayers that faded into the roar. And when these winds turned to land, they were no less cruel. They swept across fields, ruining the labor of many hands, turning harvest into dust, crushing young plants beneath their weight, howling with a voice that could not be reasoned with, and driving fear into all who looked to the sky and saw the dust rise in spirals. These were the winds born from the monster's fall, the breath of Typhoeus lingering in the world, scattered and restless, never sleeping. Even though he was broken, cast down, and hidden away, Typhoeus could not escape the fate that had been written for him. As one poet said, no matter how strong, no matter how full of fire, even the hardest heart, even the most boastful rage is brought to ruin by violence, sooner or later. And Typhoeus, with his 100 heads and terrible cries, could not avoid what was coming. The one who had lived in the caves of Cilicia, hidden from the world, had dared to rise and challenge the very throne of the heavens, and he paid the price. Another voice, heavy with pity, looked upon the fallen form and remembered him not as a conqueror, but as a creature of earth, bound and humbled by force, brought down from his height and laid low beneath the hammering sky. With 100 heads and the breath of fire, he had tried to strike fear into every god, his jaws opening wide with hissing and hatred, and his eyes glowing with a glare so awful that even the bravest looked away. But none of it was enough. The bolt of Zeus, never sleeping, came like fate, with fire in its breath, and it struck him not just in body, but in heart. His screams were silenced, and his strength burned away in the same flames he had once commanded. He was turned to ash, his power shattered, and his limbs stretched helpless across the land. Now he lies still, pinned beneath the roots of a mighty mountain, his body buried near the narrow sea, no longer roaring, no longer climbing, but still dangerous in his silence. The top of that mountain is guarded by flame, and upon it sits the god of fire, working his forge, shaping metal from the ore, while below the heat builds and builds. For it is said that the fire beneath the mountain is not only the work of the forge, but the rage of Typhoeus, still burning. And one day, from that peak, shall pour rivers of fire, not gentle, not warm, but wild and full of fury. They shall flow down the slopes, devouring the fields of Sicily, destroying what lies in their path, and that will be the rage of Typhoeus breaking forth once more. Though charred, though buried, though forgotten by many, he is not gone. The flames of his defeat still smoulder, and in the heart of the earth his anger waits. Spouting forth with hot jets of appalling fire-breathing surge, the monstrous figure rose with fury, filling the sky with thick smoke and piercing flame, a living storm born of earth and chaos. His image, so feared and hated, was once carved upon the wide, coiled face of a warrior's shield, a symbol so fierce that it made even seasoned men tremble, for it showed Typhon himself, the one who had dared to challenge the highest, spewing black smoke from his mouth, thick and dark, the swift sibling of fire curling into the air like a rising serpent. The rim of the shield that carried his likeness was ringed with braids of snakes, twisted and coiled, hissing in silent echo of the real terror. In the battle before the gates of the city, one warrior bore this image proudly, his shield blazing with the fire-breathing monster, while across the field another stood with the Zeus upon his own shield, the king of gods holding a bolt of lightning in his raised hand, bright and burning. The gods they carried upon their backs mirrored the men themselves, and it was clear to those who watched that the clash would be more than mortal. The one with the thunderbolt had the favor of the divine, and the other bore the hated shape of a beast, not just loathed by men, but by the gods who lived long in the heavens. For none had forgotten the time when that same shape had risen in real fire, larger than any before or after, born of earth's anger and the depth of the pit. When the giants had been defeated, the gods had won a great battle, but the earth, their ancient enemy, was not finished. Still burning with fury, she lay with Tartarus in the dark spaces far beneath, and from that union she bore a final son in the land of Cilicia, a creature unlike any before. Typhon was his name, and he was a mixture of man and beast, yet so vast and terrible that all other monsters seemed small beside him. From the waist up, his form mimicked a man, but stretched so tall that his body rose beyond the peaks of mountains, and his head, wild and blazing, often brushed the stars. His arms were spread so far that one hand reached the farthest west, and the other extended into the farthest east. Each hand bore not fingers, but heads, 100 serpent heads that twisted and hissed, biting the air and each other, never resting. From the waist down, he was not man at all, but made of gigantic coils of vipers, thick and powerful, which slithered upward, rising all the way to his shoulders, forming a cage of living serpents around him. Every one of them hissed with might, their mouths open, their tongues flicking. His whole form was winged, and the wings were not like a bird's, but vast and leathery, flapping with such force that the winds rose and forests bowed. His hair was not clean or combed, but matted and tangled, heavy with dirt, whipping across his cheeks like a curtain of grime. His eyes burned, truly burned, with real flame, flickering from beneath heavy lids. Fire danced within them, not just reflecting light, but producing it, as if his gaze alone could sear the world. Such was Typhon, a monster so immense and full of power that even the sky seemed small beside him. When he moved, it was with rage, and when he raised his hands, he hurled red-hot stones into the sky, screaming with all his many mouths, a terrible sound made worse by the mixture of hisses and shouts that never stopped. Flames poured from his open jaws, boiling the air and setting the clouds ablaze. A great storm gathered with every breath, and his fire spread wide, scorching all that it touched. The gods, who had just stood victorious over the giants, now looked on in horror as this greater threat emerged, rising from the earth like a curse. When they saw him coming, they did not stand their ground. Instead, fear took them, and they fled from their high places. They ran not to the corners of the world, but to one land, Egypt. There, in the foreign sands, they sought safety, and in their fear, they changed their forms, becoming animals to hide from the advancing storm. Some grew wings, others hooves, others scales, hoping to escape his notice, to blend into the wilderness. But the monster chased them, driven by the fire in his blood, rising higher and higher, shouting as he went, his serpent legs dragging long trails behind him, his wings darkening the sky. Yet one did not run. From a distance, the sky's ruler watched. He stood firm and hurled thunderbolt after thunderbolt, each one bright and roaring, flashing across the sky with the force of a falling star. These bolts met Typhon mid-flight, striking his head, his chest, his wings, each one exploding with fire and shaking the world. The sky cracked, the earth shuddered, and the sea churned. But the monster did not fall easily. He roared louder, spreading his limbs wide, reaching with his hands of serpents, answering fire with fire. Still, the thunder did not stop. The bolts came faster, brighter, heavier. They burned the air around them, turning clouds into steam. One final strike found its mark, burning deeper than the rest, shaking even the stars from their stillness. Typhon screamed, and all his 100 voices screamed with him. But the cry was not one of victory. It was pain, deep and final, as the fire took him, wrapped around him, and dragged him down. He fell, a mountain of smoke and ash, crashing through sky and earth, sending quakes through the land. The light of his fire grew dim, the hissing grew faint, and the storm began to fade. The gods watched from afar as the form that had once darkened the world lay broken, and his fire-breathing mouths no longer burned the air. But though the monster was gone, his shadow remained. He had reached toward the sky, dared the throne, and left behind more than just fear. His image stayed in the minds of those who had seen it, carved into shields, remembered in battle, feared in dreams, and so, even after he fell, he lived on in symbol and smoke, his face burned into memory, his fire not truly forgotten. Typhon drew near with terrible force, rising like a storm against the sky, his many heads spitting fire and his serpents hissing with rage, and when he had come close, Zeus rushed to meet him with a sickle forged of unbreakable adamant, the weapon sharp enough to tear through any beast or god. Zeus swung with might, trying to bring the monster down, but Typhon, fast and filled with fury, turned and fled, his massive body moving with unnatural speed. Zeus did not let him go, but followed close, pressing forward with thunder in hand, chasing the creature all the way to Mount Cassion in Syria, where the winds howled and the earth trembled under their steps. But Zeus, though mighty, had suffered wounds in the struggle, and when he saw that the battle had taken its toll, he attempted to finish the fight with his bare hands. He charged at Typhon, but the monster, full of cunning and strength, wrapped his massive coils around the god, holding him fast, tightening with terrible force until even the thunder wielder could not break free. Then Typhon snatched the sickle from his hand and, with one swift strike, cut out the sinews from Zeus's hands and feet, stripping him of strength and power in a single moment. Powerless, Zeus was lifted onto Typhon's back, a prisoner carried like a trophy across the sea to the land of Cilicia, where deep within the earth lay the Corycian cave, hidden and dark. There, in that secret place, Typhon threw down Zeus and hid the sinews in the skin of a bear, tucking them away where none could find them. And to ensure that they remained untouched, he left them under the watch of Delphin, a creature that was part maiden and part serpent, with wild eyes and terrible hunger, half beast and fully dangerous. But even in defeat, Zeus was not forgotten. Hermes, swift and clever, and Aegipan, wild and brave, came in secret, creeping through the darkness, and stole back the sinews without being seen. They took them from the bearskin and returned them to Zeus, restoring his strength, and once again the storm stirred in his heart. With power rushing back through his limbs, Zeus rose from the depths of the cave, not crawling but soaring, his chariot drawn by winged horses, thundering across the sky with fire in his hand and anger in his eyes. He struck with lightning once more, chasing Typhon through the lands, driving him toward Mount Nysa, where trees stood tall and strange, fruits hung heavy on the branches. There the fates waited, and they did not offer aid, but trickery. They gave the monster sweet fruit and whispered lies, telling him the food would restore his strength, make him more powerful, help him strike harder and run faster. But the fruit was not strength, it was weakness, and when Typhon ate, he felt fire in his limbs and thought it might be power, but it was only the wine of forgetfulness and false hope. Zeus came upon him again, chasing him to the lands of Thrace, where the mountain Hymos rose like a wall against the sky. There Typhon made a final stand, ripping mountains from their roots and hurling them with all his might, trying to crush the god beneath stone and rage. But Zeus met stone with thunder, and the mountains were flung back, exploding in the sky with fire and noise. And when they struck Typhon, blood poured from him in such great rivers that the mountain was named after the wound, Hymos, the place of blood. Still Typhon did not stop, but fled again, his massive body dragging itself through the Sicilian Sea, trying to escape across the waters. But Zeus, flying high, would not let him go. He raised his hand and called down a final blow, and with it he cast the great weight of Mount Etna down upon the monster. The mountain struck with the force of the sky itself, burying Typhon beneath its roots, sealing him under stone and fire. There he lies still, beneath the black peak, and when the mountain smokes and the earth shakes, it is said to be the breath of Typhon struggling in the deep, the last fury of a monster who once dared to rise against the king of the gods. The mountain burns not with ordinary fire, but with the lightning that struck the beast, a fire that has never gone out, a flame that still remembers the battle. Elsewhere, it was told that when Typhon was first struck by the bolt on the slopes of the Caucasus, his blood ran warm and thick from his head, staining the rocks red, and from there he crawled away to Nysa, where the land swallowed him. His body was hidden beneath the waters of the Sabonian lake, where marsh and fog forever cling to the surface, a place where the ground seems solid but is soft and treacherous, hiding the presence of something ancient and vast. Another tale told that he was finally struck down in Phrygia, that Zeus brought his wrath there and ended the battle once and for all. Still others believed that after the defeat of the giants, Zeus hunted down every last threat, slaying one by one until Typhon was the last to fall. And when the bolts finally struck true, Typhon lay in the dust, unmoving, like a broken shadow across the land, his strength gone, his fire smothered, a memory burned into the stone. The poets compared fallen heroes to him, saying that when the strong fall, they fall like Typhon, blasted by the sky flattened by the hand that holds the storm. In the old caves of Korikos, they said it was not just Hermes who helped, but the wild son of the earth, Pan, who tricked Typhon by promising a feast of fish and luring him from his deep place to the shore, where the trap was sprung and the god rose again. Whether by trickery or war, Typhon was brought low, but his story remained, not as a whisper, but as thunder that echoes in the mountains, smoke that rises from Etna, and fire that sleeps beneath the earth, waiting, of the sea, where the swift lightning and the rushing fiery thunderbolts laid him low. The great and monstrous form of Typhon fell in a storm of light and flame, his 100 heads writhing and screaming as fire poured down from the sky. And each of those terrible heads slammed against the jagged rocks with such force that his body was torn and tossed, carded like wool beneath the hand of a violent storm. The sky was filled with smoke and cries. The sea boiled and the land shook as the thunderbolts fell without pause. Even now, long after the clash between the sky god and the last great challenger, the yellow shores by the sea remain stained with a deep red, a mark left behind by the battle that burned the heavens and shattered the earth. The blood of the fallen monster still clinging to the stones as memory. Typhon, who had once risen like a mountain himself, full of fury and endless strength, had dared to lift his heads high above the earth and challenge the ruler of the sky for dominion over all things. But he had been met with fire that could not be escaped and for force that would not yield. He fell, brought down by the one who holds the thunderbolt, and with his fall came the thunderous echo of ruin. He had been born not like other creatures, but from the dark heart of the deep, sprung from Tartarus by Tartara, shaped by ancient chaos itself into a figure of terrifying size and unnatural form. From his broad shoulders burst 100 dragon heads, each one crowned with flame, each with a mind and voice of its own, each spitting venom and roaring with hatred. He came not to speak, but to seize, to fight, to rule. He threw his challenge before the heavens, daring Zeus to face him, to prove if he was worthy of the throne he held. But the answer came not in words, but in the flash of the thunderbolt that never misses its mark, and it struck Typhon in the chest with such blazing heat that his body ignited and fire raced across his limbs. In agony, the monster thrashed, and the earth groaned under his weight. Zeus then cast the great mass of Mount Etna upon him, burying him under the volcano's roots, sealing the fiery body beneath stones so thick and deep that not even the stormborn one could rise again. From that mountain's peak, fire still bursts forth, not as a gift to the world, but as the echo of that ancient wound, a warning of what had once happened and what still stirs below. It was not just in one tale that Typhon's fall was told, for in every age poets remembered him. They spoke of how the sky was filled with storms and thunder, how clouds were gathered by the nod of Zeus, and how the fire that fell Typhon glowed brighter than the sun. Some said he was struck down on the slopes of the Phlegra, the land where the giants fell, and others told how his broken body lay by the Sabonian lake, his blood warming the marshes, his massive limbs now still beneath the waters. Still others whispered of his fall in Phrygia, where Zeus hunted down the last threats and burned them one by one until only silence remained. He had been so vast that poets compared all great falls to his, saying that when heroes fell, they fell like Typhon. When cities crumbled, they crumbled like his limbs crashing to the ground, and when storms raged, it was as if his breath still moved through the clouds. In magic and myth, even the parts of his body became feared. In spells and rituals, the coils of his serpents were used, for they carried the wild strength of rebellion, and in tales of gods and mortals alike, his fire was remembered as a symbol of destruction that reached even the sky. Some said he had been lured from his hiding place by the promise of food, tricked by the wild god of the mountain, who used nets to catch him like a beast of the sea, dragging the stormborn back to where the thunder could find him. Others spoke of how he once roared with such confidence that he thought the stars already belonged to him, that the sky would soon be his, and he could not understand why the daughter of wisdom stood against him, or why the god of wine drove his chariot to meet him. But all his boast turned to ashes and his pride to silence, for the fire that Zeus brought with him burned not just flesh, but hope. Even the gods had once fled from him. When he first rose from the earth, with his many wings and countless heads and hands dragging coils of serpents behind him, he looked so terrible that the immortals ran from their seats and flew to Egypt. There, in fear, they hid themselves in the forms of animals, disguising their divinity behind horn and feather, scale and hoof, all to escape the eyes of the monster. But Zeus did not hide. From afar, he waited, gathering the clouds, raising the winds, and when the moment came, he hurled his bolts not as warnings, but as final judgment. In the end, Typhon, though fierce and proud, fell as all must fall before the storm. He was thrown down into the earth, buried where fire still remembers him, and though his body lies still, the mountain over him breathes smoke, and the sky above still holds the light that burned him. His blood runs through the land, his cries echo in storms, and his name, once spoken with fear, now lingers in stone, smoke, and shadow. Emitted from deep within him came all kinds of roars, loud and fierce, cries that echoed through sky and land, shaking the mountains and rattling the depths of the sea. And nothing in the world, not even the gods themselves, could resist his might as he rose in full power. He was filled with an urge not just to rage, but to rule, and he burned with the desire to take the throne of heaven, to usurp the rule of the sky's king and place himself above all. When he surged forward to make war against the immortals, no god dared to stand in his way. In sudden terror, they fled, leaving their high thrones behind, rushing across the lands to Aegyptos, where the great river and endless sands might hide them. But not all fled. 2 alone remained, one whose hand held the thunder, and one whose heart knew no fear. Yet Typhon, not satisfied, hunted them still, trailing after the fleeing immortals with fury, his head spitting fire and his limbs coiled with the strength of serpents, his eyes glowing like stars drowned in flame. The gods, sensing what was to come, took no chances. They transformed themselves into the shapes of animals, hoping to escape the monster's gaze and move unseen beneath strange forms. The bright one of prophecy changed into a hawk, his wings cutting the wind, rising like the falcon of the desert sky. The swift messenger, keeper of signs and secrets, took on the shape of the long-beaked ibis, walking softly along the river's edge. The god of war, wild and strong, became a fish, slipping into the dark waters as if hiding from the spear of his own nature. The moon huntress leapt into the shape of a cat, sleek and silent, her eyes glowing in the dark, the very image of sharp grace. The god of wine and wild things became a goat, hooved and nimble, darting through the rocky ground. The strong one who bore burdens and bore battles became a fawn, small and swift, no longer the roaring lion, but a silent creature of the forest. The forger of flame and iron took the shape of an ox, slow and strong, hiding in the fields as if shaped from the very land. The mother of twins, gentle and quiet, became a shrew mouse, small and nearly invisible, crawling into crevices where even gods might go unseen. And others too took forms of whatever beast they could manage, each trying to disappear into Egypt's earth and rivers, to escape the eyes and fire of the storm-born enemy. And still, Typhon came, shaking the earth with the airs, each step, his many hands clawing at the clouds, his breath thick with smoke, his body towering and stretching across the sky. But Zeus would not remain hidden. When the time was right, when the gods had slipped away and the trap had turned, Zeus rose from the shadow, holding his thunderbolt once more, and cast it against the monster with fire that split the sky in two. The bolt struck, and Typhon, his body alight, fled with a scream, diving into the sea to douse the blaze that clung to him, hoping to quench the divine fire in the waves. But the king of heaven did not yield. He followed, chasing his enemy down with strike after strike, until finally he found him again, beneath the shadow of the great mountain. And there he brought his vengeance down, not in words, but in stone. He took the highest peak, Mount Etna, and hurled it upon the body of the fallen one, sealing him beneath its weight, pinning him down so that his limbs could no longer rise, and placing upon the peak the god of the forge to keep watch. There, beneath the anvils and the fire of the smith, Typhon's neck lay bound, and the red-hot blooms of the forge were beaten against him as iron is shaped by fire and hammer. The flame of heaven pressed against the body of rebellion. In another telling, it was said that when the gods reached Egypt in fear, it was Pan who had the idea, calling out that they should take on the forms of beasts to better deceive the oncoming terror. They listened, and by his warning, they avoided destruction. In some accounts, they said that Typhon came suddenly, an enemy like no other, deadly and fierce, and when he appeared, they shifted their shapes quickly, Hermes into an ibis, Apollo into a bright bird of Thrace, Artemis into a silent cat, each one hiding in the sacred shapes of animals. For this reason, the priests of Egypt were said to hold these creatures holy, calling them the forms of gods, the very images of divinity in disguise. Pan himself, half beast already, leapt into the river and made his form part fish, part goat, becoming something not of this world, and so escaped from Typhon's gaze. Even the goddess of love and her winged child were not spared fear. In one tale, they came to the Euphrates, where the monster appeared suddenly. With no other option, they threw themselves into the water and became fish, swimming away from the threat, and in memory of their escape, the image of two fish was set in the stars, a sign of salvation. And again, in another tale, it was told how Typhon rose from the deepest parts of the earth, striking such terror that even the hearts of gods were shaken, and they turned and fled until they came to the seven-mouthed Nile, hiding among reeds and stones. Yet still, Typhon chased them, never stopping, never turning away, and there, in the land where river and desert meet, they became not gods of Olympus, but silent animals, slipping beneath the eyes of the earth-born giant. Zeus, too, took a form, the shape of a ram, strong and proud, and in that shape he was remembered, honored as the great horned one, worshipped as the god who did not fall. But the chase ended not in silence, but in flame. When Typhon finally fell beneath the mountain, when Zeus struck him with bolts that burned brighter than all others, the fire did not die. It still burns today beneath the rocks, in the deep places where the earth breathes smoke. Etna erupts not because of time or season, but because the fire that struck Typhon still burns within him. And though he is buried, though the gods returned to their thrones and the world went on, his story remains in the fire, in the thunder, in the beast once shaped by fear, and in the mountain that still remembers the battle. Zeus, armed with his thunder, lightning, and the fierce power of his thunderbolt, rose with all his strength and leapt down from the heights of Olympus to face the terrible monster that had risen against the gods. With every strike, he set fire to the many wild heads of the creature, burning their dread forms with divine flame. As the battle raged and thunder roared across the sky, the earth shook beneath the force of their clash. Finally, Zeus, filled with furious power, cast Typhoeus down into the deep white pit of Tartaros. There, far beneath the surface of the world, he was thrown into a prison of shadow and silence, where no light reached and no sky could be seen. And from Typhoeus, even while bound, came the force of the wild winds, all except the gentle and God-sent ones, Notos, Boreas, and Zephyros, who were blessings to mankind. The others, born of Typhoeus' rage, blew with cruel force across the seas, dark and furious, stirring up storms, scattering ships, and drowning sailors. They roared through the air without warning, their blasts striking hard and leaving wreckage in their wake. Those caught in their path on the water had no hope, for the winds gave no mercy and the sea showed no kindness. Others, sweeping over the land, tore through the fields where men lived and farmed, lifting dust into the sky and bringing destruction with every gust, turning what was calm into chaos, what was green into dust. That enemy of the gods, once powerful and full of fury, now lay in fearsome Tartaros, buried in a prison made not of walls but of pressure and weight, his body crushed beneath the earth. Long ago, he had been born in a deep cave, hidden in the famed land of Kilikia, his form strange and terrible, his power enough to shake the very heavens. Now the cliffs and heavy earth of distant lands pressed down on his chest, keeping him still. The lands above him were not quiet, for the place where he was buried trembled and burned. Over the sea near Cumae and across the island of Sicily stood a tall and fiery mountain, Etna. That mountain, rising high into the clouds, held him close, its peak acting as a pillar that reached toward the sky, trapping the storm-born giant underneath. His shaggy chest heaved under the weight of stone and fire, and though he was pinned, his power had not faded. From beneath the mountain, the heat rose, smoke curled upward, and from time to time, the mountain itself erupted in flame, as if to remind the world of what lay under its surface. In the realm of the dead, where shadows live and silence is louder than thunder, threats still lingered. One among the judges of the dead, the stern one named Iarchos, once warned of the punishments waiting in the darkest places of the underworld. There were rocks that wept blood, cliffs soaked with the stains of suffering, and rivers that ran not just with water, but with the cries of the condemned. Among the darkest horrors were the hounds of Kokitos, circling in endless hunger, and the many-headed serpent creature with the wild, snapping jaws, perhaps another form of the same Typhoeus, whose body still held the fury of rebellion. Iarchos spoke of entrails torn by beasts of the deep, lungs bitten by monstrous creatures, and kidneys bleeding from wounds left by cruel hands. The Gorgons, dreadful and screaming, would descend with tearing claws, their rage never ending, their strength unyielding. And in all this horror, the name of the monster remained, Typhoeus, who once dared to challenge the heavens and was now buried, chained by weight and fire, yet never forgotten. Far above his prison, the gods had once hidden from his wrath, changing their forms to escape his gaze. In the stories told by poets and passed through generations, it was remembered how the gods, fearing the storm, had taken the shapes of beasts. The one with golden horns became a ram, his curled horns like the god Ammon. The Lightbringer, in fear, flew into the sky as a raven. The god of wine, filled with fear, became a goat. The huntress, silent and sharp, became a cat. The queen of the heavens took the form of a snow-white cow. The goddess of love slipped into the sea as a fish. The swift-footed messenger took on the shape of an ibis. Each of them, gods of great power, had become animals, trying to escape a fate worse than shame: destruction. The gods, once majestic, once untouchable, had hidden among rivers and reeds, forests and fields, trying only to survive until the storm passed. And there was another tale of escape, when the goddess of love carrying her child fled from the terrible monster. She had reached the banks of the Euphrates, her heart pounding, clutching the small boy close, believing that danger was near. She called out for help, calling to the spirits of the river, to the nymphs hidden in its depths, to anyone who could shield her and the child. Without waiting, she leapt into the water, and in that moment, 2 fish appeared beneath them. Those twin fish carried her and the child to safety, swimming fast and far, pulling them from the reach of Typhoeus' fire. In the oldest tales, told in whispers and songs, Typhoeus was not just a monster, but the source of the wildest winds. The good winds, gentle and useful, came from another place, but the dark ones, the ones that came without warning, the ones that destroyed boats and scattered seeds, were born from him. His rage had not died, only buried. His body, trapped under the mountain, still trembled, and from his breath came the storms that crossed the world. Every time the sea rose high and the sky turned black, some said it was Typhoeus stirring in his prison, trying once again to rise. And when the mountain cracked and spat fire, it was not just earth moving. It was the breath of the storm-born, the fire of rebellion, the echo of a war that once shook the heavens. Beneath Etna, in the depths of the earth, the shape of the defeated still lies, pressed under rock, watched by the forge, remembered in flame. While they hovered in the air, their wings beating slowly and their breaths growing heavy with fear, the harpies felt the approach of death drawing close behind them. Their hearts pounded and their strength began to fail as they flew low and sluggishly across the sky, desperate and haunted by the danger that followed. Every beat of their wings felt heavier, and the wind no longer seemed to carry them, as if the very air was pressing them down. The fear of their pursuers, those divine sons of the north wind, clung to them like a shadow, and in that moment of weakness and despair, they lifted their terrible voices in shrill cries. Their ghastly shrieks pierced the sky as they called out to the one who had given them life, their father, the terrible Typhon. And in answer to their plea, the dark force that lay beneath the world stirred. From the deepest shadows, Typhon rose, and with him came the darkness, thick and rolling, sweeping across the heavens. The high places and the low were swallowed in the same shadow, sky and earth no longer separate but consumed by the gloom he brought. The light faded as the darkness spread, and from the very heart of that blackness came a voice, deep and thunderous, filled with power and ancient rage. The voice of Typhon answering the cries of his daughters, his presence blotting out the world. The very earth trembled and shook at his rising, as if the ground itself feared what was waking. The mountain roots quivered, and the valleys groaned, as when Zeus, filled with wrath, hurled his bolts of fire into the land of Phlegra, where the battle with the giants had once shaken the world. There, in that same fury, Zeus had struck down Typhon, forcing him back, throwing him down with such power that the monster was sent into the deepest corners of the earth, buried far from the reach of light. But the story did not end with that battle, for Typhon's prison was a place unlike any other, a region at the edge of the known world, beyond rivers and lands touched by the sun. This place was the land of the Eremoi, a strange and distant realm spoken of by the poets of old. It was said to lie far beyond the river Okeanos, where the edge of the earth met the edge of the sea. There the light of the sun never reached, and mists rolled like waves across the land. The sky was always heavy with cloud, and a dismal night covered the land like a blanket that could never be lifted. This was the land where Typhon was buried, prostrate and bound, where even the gods did not tread. Homer spoke of this place, where the earth groaned beneath the weight of the fallen. Monster and Zeus, in his fury, had battered the land until it trembled. The place was not only Typhon's prison, but also the home of another dark being, Echidna, the half-woman, half-snake, who lived in a cave hidden beneath a hollow rock. This cave was far from all others, a place removed from gods and mortals alike, buried deep in the land of the Eremoi. There Echidna, ageless and undying, kept her lair, watching from the darkness. She shared her home with the silence and the damp, and there, under the weight of stone and time, the world had forgotten her. But the poets remembered, and they said that the same land where she slept was the land where Typhon lay, crushed and chained, his power trapped beneath the earth but never truly gone. The land itself bore the weight of this ancient punishment, its rocks cracked and scorched, its mountains trembling from time to time with the stirring of what lay below there. In another tale, the story of a ship reached this border of the world. The ship carried a man who had wandered far, and his journey took him to the bounds of the eddying Okeanos. There, he found a land of gloom, the land of the Chimeroi, which the poets believed to be the same place as the land of the Eremoi. In this land, the sun never shone. No golden rays touched the soil. No warmth of daylight broke the eternal shadow. Day and night were the same, grey and silent. Here the rivers of the underworld, Acheron and Styx, flowed nearby, and the realm felt close to death itself, with the weight of the world pressing down on the land and the silence echoing like thunder. Strabo, the geographer of later years, tried to place these myths into the real world, speaking of places and lands where the ancient poets had said the Eremoi once lived. He mentioned lands at the foot of snowy mountains, in places called Tmolos and Hyde, trying to connect the myth with the earth. But no matter where people searched, the truth of the Eremoi's land was never fully found. It was always just beyond the reach of maps, just beyond the known, wrapped in fog and memory. The prison of Typhon was not a place meant to be found, for it was a symbol of what must remain buried: rage, chaos, and rebellion against the sky. And so Typhon remained there, buried beneath stone and forgotten lands, his power sealed away, his cries swallowed by the dark. But even in his sleep, the world could not forget him. The earthquakes that shake the ground, the storms that rise from nowhere, the fires that erupt from the hearts of mountains. Some still say those are his breath, his dreams, his fury pressing against the world. The land of the Eremoi, the realm of mist and silence, holds more than shadow. It holds the memory of the time when the heavens were challenged, when the earth trembled, and when a god fought with fire to bring peace back to the sky. Believe that such a vast area was burned by common fire alone or by mere chance, for the signs were too clear and widespread, the blackened earth stretching far in every direction, the ground scarred and broken, as if something immense had torn through it, leaving behind a land wounded and scorched. This region, called the Katakakamine, the burnt land, was marked by its strange stillness, its air heavy with the smell of sulfur and ash, its soil dark like coal. The trees that once grew there were no more, and the land bore only a stubborn vine, the only plant that could grow in the ashen soil, yielding a wine known to all who lived nearby. The hills and ridges of this land, black and cracked like cooled lava, gave rise to stories, and people whispered that this was the very place where Typhon had fought and fallen, where the fire of heaven had met the rage of earth, and where the ground had never healed. This belief was not without reason, for all who passed through saw the marks of violence in the terrain, hollows that gaped like open wounds, rocks that bore scorch marks deep into their surface, and lakes that steamed with foul vapors rising from the depths. Many debated the true place where Typhon had fallen, for the legends were ancient and the names of the lands changed with time. Some said he lay beneath Mount Etna, crushed under the weight of the towering peak, his breath rising as smoke and flame from the mountain's mouth. Others claimed he had once dwelt in a great cave in Cilicia, and when the sky god defeated him, he fled westward, only to be buried beneath the shores of Kaimai and the island of Sikelia. There were those who believed that Typhon's prison was not in one place alone, but that his vast body stretched across many lands, his head beneath one mountain, his chest beneath another, and his legs buried in yet more distant lands. The people of Pithecusae, small islands surrounded by sea and rock, spoke of their own connection to the story. They said the name Arimoi, given to the people said to dwell where Typhon lay, came from their word for ape, Pithekoi, and that their islands were part of the myth. The lands burned and reshaped by volcanic force seemed to agree with this claim. Others pointed to Syria, where the name Arimaeans still echoed in the speech of those who lived there, and said that the people who had once fled from Troy had come here and settled, carving out a new Cilicia for themselves in memory of their lost home. Still others said that the land of the Arimoi lay not in the east or in the islands, but in the dark valleys and caves of Lydia, where the earth was full of fire and smoke. The lakes there were strange and unclean, their waters bubbling with gases and their air thick with foul smells. The rivers twisted through the land like veins beneath the skin of a dying giant, and the earth opened in cracks and craters, as if something within still struggled to rise again. In these lands, where the Meander River wound its way between valleys and cliffs, where the shadows seemed longer and the light weaker, the tale of Typhon lived on in stone and soil. Some said that it was here that Zeus had brought down his full strength, striking the earth with lightning and fire, his rage burning so hot that it melted the very bones of the world. The mountains here were not like others. They bore the signs of thunderbolts, black streaks across the cliffs and craters that had never filled with water. And though people settled in nearby towns and planted vineyards in the soil that would still accept life, they did not forget the story. They walked carefully near the hollows and caves, speaking softly when they passed, for they knew the land itself might still remember the pain. Even the vines that grew here were unlike those elsewhere. They yielded a wine so strong, so deep in flavor and heat, that people said it had fire in its blood. It was called Caracaculminite, named after the burnt land, and it carried with it the memory of what lay beneath. Those who drank it sometimes dreamed of fire and darkness, of thunder and smoke, of something vast stirring in the earth. And so the story endured, not just in words, but in the ground, in the stones, in the wind that moved through the silent valleys, and in the way the air sometimes trembled without reason. Though some doubted these tales and others tried to place them in lands far away. There was always a sense that something ancient and terrible had happened here. The myths may have changed with the names of the lands and the languages of their people, but the signs remained. The blackened soil, the steaming lakes, the shattered rocks, all bore witness to a time when the sky had fought the earth and the gods had battled to keep the world from falling into chaos. And at the center of it all was Typhon, the monster of many heads, the Stormbringer, the one who dared to rise against heaven. Crushed beneath the weight of mountains, buried in lands whose names were lost and found again, he remained a part of the world, hidden but never forgotten, a warning carved into the land itself. Of the sky, Mount Etna holds him down with all its crushing weight. The earth groans beneath the pressure of his limbs, and the fires that burn deep in the mountain are the breath that still escapes from his buried chest. When he moves in the darkness, the land shakes and smoke pours out from cracks in the mountain, rising into the sky in thick plumes. The people who live nearby watch the mountaintop with wary eyes, for when it rumbles and glows red at night, they remember the ancient tale of the monster beneath. They say that long ago, when the war between the heavens and the earth still raged, Typhon rose up with a strength that threatened even the gods. With heads of serpents and a voice that roared like all the storms at once, he hurled rocks into the sky and breathed fire against the thunderbolts that rained down on him. But the sky god would not yield. With a mighty strike, he brought the storm to a halt, and the ground split beneath the weight of the blow. The beast, wounded and raging, fell back to the earth, his blood spilling over the land and sinking into the soil. He tried to rise again, dragging his body across the lands, but he was too weak. And so, at last, the earth itself opened, and a mountain rose over him like a lid on a jar. Etna was formed where he fell, its roots digging deep to bind his limbs and its peak rising high as a warning to all. The fire that burns within it is not only from the earth but from him, the last of his power trapped beneath the stone. Sometimes, when the winds are still and the sky is clear, the people say you can hear the low rumble of his breath echoing through the hills. And when the volcano awakens, spewing fire and ash into the sky, they say it is his anger, rising again from the depths where he is chained. But this is not the only place where his body was said to lie. Some said that he fled to Egypt after his defeat, crawling across the deserts, his blood boiling the sands and his breath turning the skies dark. There, in the Sabonian marsh, he sank into the wet earth and vanished beneath the still waters. The land around the marsh was lifeless, a dry and empty space that stretched for days, where no bird flew and no tree grew. The people avoided it, for they believed that under its surface, the monster still stirred, waiting. The marsh bubbled sometimes, and the reeds would move without wind, and they knew then that he had shifted in his prison. Others believed he still lay in the far land of the Arimoi, beneath hills and hollows scorched by the sky. There, the ground was black and broken, and strange fires burned deep underground. The wind carried the smell of ash, and the rivers steamed as they passed through the land. This was a place where lightning had struck too often, and the hills were shaped not by time but by sudden violence. Here too, they said, his body lay buried, the land formed by the moment of his fall. Some thought his arms reached one land and his legs another, his body so vast that no one place could hold him. The tales changed from place to place, but all agreed on one thing. He had risen once in rage and had been cast down in fire. In the land of Lydia, in the region called Katakekameni, the burnt country, the earth was covered in ash and the rocks were black. Here they found great pits that they called bellows, from which smoke once rose. The hills nearby were jagged and sharp, as though something had exploded beneath them. People believed that these were the marks left by the fire that had erupted when the monster fell, and that it was the heat of his breath that had scorched the land. Even now, they say, the wine from the soil tastes like it remembers the flame. In Sicily, the people look to Mount Etna, and in Egypt they avoid the marsh, and in Lydia they walk softly across the ash-covered ground. Across all these lands the story of the monster lives, written not in books, but in the land itself. His breath is fire, his limbs are hills, and his cries are the rumble of the earth. He was struck down by thunder, his 100 heads silenced by lightning, but the earth did not forget. It holds him still, in caves and bogs, beneath hills and under fire, and the people have not forgotten either. They see his signs in every eruption, in every earthquake, in every sudden crack that opens in the earth. He may not rise again, but he is not gone. He sleeps beneath the lands that bore witness to his fall, and the world remembers him in every storm and every flame that comes from the heart of the earth. Tales of the monster trapped beneath the towering summit, that white-clad peak known as Etna, where snow clings even in the brightest days of summer, holding fast through all seasons. Yet beneath that frozen cover, fire churns deep in the heart of the mountain, never resting. In sudden moments, this fire breaks free and flings itself into the sky, shooting out in fountains so pure and bright that no one dares to stand near. These fires do not just dance in silence. They roar with anger and hurl thick rivers of smoke into the sky by day, casting a dark shadow over the land. At night, the mountain becomes a living thing, alive with glowing red flows that twist and tumble down the rocks with a wild sound, crashing and clattering as they plunge toward the open sea below. This terrible wonder, this fury of smoke and fire, is no simple trick of nature, but the breath of the creature bound beneath it. He is not dead, but sleeps, though his sleep is not peaceful. His body, scarred and torn, lies stretched across the rough stone, and his back is marked by the hardness of his prison. The mountain does not release him, but it cannot silence him either. Once long ago, his strength was fearsome, but the lightning broke him. The burning bolt, hurled with fury from above, blasted his power away and turned him to ash. And now, he is only a massive, helpless body lying near the narrow stretch of sea, with the very roots of Etna anchoring him to the ground. Upon the highest point of the mountain, the god of the forge works day and night, striking the molten metal on his anvil, and it is said that his hammering stirs the flames from below. These flames do not rise gently. They come with rage, they come to devour. They burst forth with wild heat, with fiery mouths that consume everything in their path, leaping across the flat fields of Sicily, where sweet fruits once grew. All of this is not the doing of the forge, but the buried wrath of the monster. He may have been burned, but he has not forgotten. The fire that rises is his breath. The flames that roar are his voice. The hot jets that spout from the mountain sides are the last signs of the rage that once dared to rise against the skies. Even now, he spits fury from his prison. The island that lies above him is not silent. It holds the memory of the war, and the weight of the monster still moves it. The earth does not rest above such a prisoner. When he shifts, the island trembles. The hills roll, the sea foams, and fire erupts from the deep. The men who once settled these lands, those who built their homes on nearby islands, could not stay. The ground turned against them. Earthquakes cracked the stones beneath their feet, and fire spilled up from the sea. The waters themselves grew hot. and small new islands full of boiling pools were born from the ocean. The people fled, leaving behind a land that trembles with the memory of what lies below. The poet who saw all this said the truth clearly. He did not speak only of monsters or gods. He spoke of the land itself and the way it burns from one end to the other. From the coast of Cumae to the farthest edge of Sicily, the fires beneath the surface connect like a hidden chain, stretching through caverns deep below. The heat runs through them like a pulse, linking one place to the next. It is not only Etna that burns. The Liparian islands glow with fire. The fields near Naples rumble with hidden fury. Baiae steams with heat that rises from under the ground. Even the island of Pithecusae shakes and smokes when the buried one stirs. All of this, the poet said, is because of him, the creature who lies under the weight of sea-washed cliffs, whose shaggy breast is pressed down by the land. He is still there, deep below, held fast by stone but not silenced. He dreams in fire. He breathes in smoke. He sends his fury up through cracks in the earth, where it bursts forth in flame. His strength may be broken, but his anger has not died. And so long as he lies there, buried but not gone, the land will never forget. The mountain will not cool, the sea will not rest, and the sky will watch carefully for signs of his stirring. His tale is not only told in stories, it is written into the earth itself. And those who live near the burning lands know this well. They walk on soil that may rise beneath them. They hear the mountain grumble in the night, and they look to the sky for fire, remembering the monster below. When the thunderbolt of Zeus struck the mighty Typhon, the creature became a living flame, burning from head to toe with the heat of divine wrath. In desperation, Typhon fled and plunged his scorched body into the sea, seeking to quench the fire that consumed him. But Zeus did not stop. The sky god, relentless and full of fury, seized the highest mountain, that great peak Etna, and hurled it down upon Typhon's seared and smoking form. Upon this mountain, Zeus placed Hephaestus, the master of fire and forge, to serve as the eternal sentinel. There, at the summit of Etna, Hephaestus set up his anvils, glowing red with heat, and began to hammer his molten blooms right upon the very neck of Typhon, turning the monster's agony into the rhythm of his forge. The fire that once tried to escape into the sea was now sealed beneath the mountain, but it did not die. It only grew deeper, hotter, and angrier, imprisoned but alive, waiting in the dark chambers under the earth. On a nearby island, painted in vivid detail, the story was preserved through images. Flames smoldered under the whole land, twisting through deep underground tunnels and hollow chambers, carved out over time like hidden veins of fire. These channels acted like living ducts, carrying the molten heat from the heart of the mountain to its jagged edges. There, the fire erupted in fierce waves and streamed into the sea in glowing torrents, tumbling in red-hot rivers that hissed and cracked as they touched the cold waters. This sight, the painting showed, was not a mere wonder of nature, but something far older and more terrifying. It was the pain of a fallen giant, crushed by the weight of land itself. As he writhed and struggled beneath the crushing mass, he sent up fire from his body, and his groans became eruptions. His breath was flame, his cries were earthquakes. He had not died when the mountain fell upon him. He had been bound instead, held there by the will of the gods. He fought still, though every movement only tightened the hold of his prison. The artists who painted this did not leave the tale nameless. They pointed to Typhon, buried deep beneath Sicily, and to Enceladus, trapped below the land of Italy. Giants, once fierce and proud, now buried alive by island and continent, not dead but slowly dying, their defeat never fully complete. And when one gazed upon the summit of the burning mountain, it seemed not just a peak, but a battlefield frozen in time. For there were the marks of thunderbolts, still glowing as if newly thrown. There were flashes in the clouds, as though Zeus continued his war, his bolts never ceasing, each strike meant to keep the giant silent beneath. Yet still, the mountain breathed. Still, it shook. The giant's hope lay with the earth itself, and the earth once cradled him. But now, even the earth was weary. The sea god had wrapped the struggle in a mist, so that what was seen seemed not of the present, but like a dream from long ago. The past and present blurred as the battle continued, not in form, but in flame. And in the shadow of the mountain stood the city of Katana, where the people did not forget. The locals spoke of Typhon as though he were part of the land itself. They said he was bound right there beneath their feet, and that it was his fire they saw rising from the peak. The smoke, they believed, was his breath, still hot from the punishment laid upon him long ago. The mountain's fury was not just volcanic, it was personal. It came from a creature still alive, still chained, and still angry. Others who told the story wove it with the words of poets and myths. They said it was not only Typhon, but perhaps Enceladus too, who was trapped below. These names echoed in the mouths of storytellers, each one repeating the same scene. A giant, crushed, but not destroyed, lying in agony beneath a mountain that burned. The flames were not of the forge, not of weather or wind, but of the very soul of a creature that once dared to challenge the sky. They said that even though the stories came from the people, shaped by memory and voice, there was truth in the flame, and truth in the shaking ground. There were once giants, they said, and their bones lie beneath us. The fire, the trembling, the heat that rises without end, all of it comes from what was buried, not what was born. The peaks of Etna, they said, are crowned with snow, yet fire lives below. In the quiet of the night, when the stars are bright and the air is still, you can hear the mountain breathing. You can feel the warmth in the ground, the slow pulse of something massive stirring. The fire sometimes rises in sudden anger, and then the sky glows red. The people watch from below, knowing the mountain is not just stone. It is a cage. It is a wound. It is the seal upon a power that once rose up in fury and now lies still but not silent. Every blow of the hammer on the mountain's top, every flare of smoke that twists into the sky, every river of lava that flows down its side is part of the same long story, a story written in heat and sealed in stone, where a giant lies beneath the world, and the mountain that holds him burns as a reminder. When tombs are broken open and strange shapes are uncovered deep within the earth, many speak of ancient giants whose bones lie hidden beneath the soil, their stories twisted by time. But there are those who deny that these beings ever dared to war against the gods, claiming instead that they only defiled sacred places, smashing statues and stepping over thresholds they should have feared. And though some speak wildly of them climbing into the sky and chasing gods away from their heavenly homes, these tales, they say, are the stuff of madness, impossible to believe and dangerous to speak aloud. Yet others remember the many-headed monster who once threatened the lands of Sicily with his wrath, the beast who brought fear to the island and caused the earth itself to tremble. And when Zeus struck him, he did so with all his fury, sending a flaming thunderbolt straight into the monster's chest. And when the fire began to consume him from within, Zeus did not pause or pity, but buried him under the towering weight of Mount Etna, pressing the burning earth onto the burning flesh, locking him below where he still breathes flame. And so the story is told that even now Etna burns because Typhon's fire still lives, trapped beneath the mountain. And though his body lies bound, his rage remains alive. And across the island of Trinacris, Sicily, the shape of his imprisonment can be seen, the three-cornered land stretching over him like a heavy shroud, with his limbs crushed beneath the weight of capes and promontories, his head pinned by Etna, his legs locked beneath Lilybaeum, and his hands held down by Pelorus and Pachynum. And even now he turns his face to the sky, and from his throat fire and ash burst forth, as if the mountain itself is breathing his pain into the air. And when he struggles, trying to lift the land that seals him in, trying to roll aside the mountains and the cities built upon them, the earth quakes in answer, trembling at his effort. And even in the silent land of the dead, the king beneath fears that the cracks will open wide and let the sun pour in, shining upon the pale souls and startling them with light they no longer know. And so the giant writhes, still not silent, and Etna heaves with his breath, her fires flaring in the sky. For every time her flames leap, it is said to be the gasp of Typhon, a bolt of fury rising from his chest. And when the mountain roars, it is his voice crying out, muffled but not forgotten. And so some say that the blasts of fire are his breath, hot and bitter, burning the roots of the world from beneath. And even now, the ground shakes when he stirs, for Typhon is not dead but buried, and his fury sleeps lightly. And others whisper that even the monsters of the sea, the whirlpools and beasts that haunt the straits, are nothing compared to him. Not even Scylla or the hunger of Charybdis can match the rage of the one who lies beneath the stone. And though he cannot rise, the land still feels the heat of his fire. And when Etna opens and the flames spill down her sides, it is as if the mountain herself is coughing up his anger, unable to contain it any longer. And some tell of the time when Poseidon, the god of the sea, found him as he tried to escape, still glowing with fire, still spitting flame from his chest, and how the god seized him by the hair and dragged him away, far across the waves, trying to drown the fire in the depths of the ocean. But the flames would not die, and the serpent limbs thrashed in the sea, churning the waters red with heat. And each time he rose, the god forced him down again, until finally he buried him beneath the land, sealing his body in earth and stone, and thus the island became his tomb. The sea became his prison walls, and the fire within him never faded, but only found new ways to rise. Through cracks in the rock, through rivers of smoke, through quakes that shake the cities above. And though the people build and live and plant their fields upon the ground that holds him, they know the danger that lies below. For when he stirs, the land moves, and when he groans, the mountains flame, and the breath of the buried giant scorches the sky, a warning that the fury of old still lives in the bones of the world. Sicilian waters surged and crashed as the giant was thrown down, and upon his head was placed all of Mount Etna with her many cities, the weight of the mountain pressing upon him like a punishment carved from the very bones of the earth. And though he lay beneath her, buried deep within the cavern chambers, he did not lie still, for savage still was his spirit, and he continued to toss and push against the foundation of the mountain, lifting it in desperate anger, only to let it fall again, his chest heaving under the strain, his groan echoing through the roots of the land as he struggled beneath the mass, moving all of Sicily, the three-cornered island called Trinacria, shaking her length and breadth as he shifted and writhed beneath her burden. And Zeus, who had once stood against him with one hand, who had faced the 100 hands of the beast and struck them down, now declared that this land of 3 promontories would receive the monster whole, would cover him entirely beneath its steep hills, and as he lay crushed beneath that mass, the many heads of the monster lay tangled and dirtied, his hair matted with the dust of defeat. Yet even in defeat, the fire had not left him, and from the place of his bed, where the mountain rock was alight, the flames continued to rise, and great boiling cauldrons of fire surged upward, the breath of his anger seeping out from the cracks in the earth. And in another time, when the world shifted again, another giant lifted the sea and poured it down upon Typhon's fiery resting place, flooding the hot earth, cooling the scorched bed of his brother with a deluge that roared over the island and hissed against the molten rock, as if to ease the burning skin of the defeated. But still the mountain flared, still the heat rose, and the stories did not end, for the tales stretched far, even into the lands of Egypt, where another name was whispered for the same power, where Typhon was not just a monster, but the very god Set. And there he hunted with fury, seeking the child of his enemy, searching the world for the son of Osiris, chasing across deserts and rivers, eager to destroy the heir who would rise. And in that time, Isis gave her child into the care of Buto, who hid him in a floating island, keeping him safe from the raging god. For the boy, called Apollo by the Greeks, was known there as Horus, and his sister Artemis as Bastet, and their mother, who nursed them, was Demeter to the Greeks and Isis to the Egyptians. And the tale twisted between the lands, connecting Typhon to Set, the destroyer to the betrayer, and the gods to those who ruled before men. And before any man walked as a king, the gods ruled Egypt, and the last of them was Horus, who rose up and overthrew Typhon, casting him down and ending the age of divine kingship. For Osiris, known to Greeks as Dionysos, had been slain, and it was his son who took the throne, marking the end of a time and the fall of a monster. And the land still bears the mark of that defeat, for near the Sabonian marsh, the place of salt and shifting ground, Typhon is said to have hidden, and the road into Egypt passed through this place, the narrow strip of arid land, 3 days wide and dry as bone, between mountain and marsh, between sea and desert, where nothing grew, and the wind blew dust across the face of the earth. And here the monster once lurked, waiting, vanquished but not erased, and the people remembered, speaking of the one who once lashed the sky with stones, whose breath scorched the heavens, who rose against Olympus, and whose fire was quenched only by being buried beneath the heaviest land, sealed under rock and city and fire. Typhoon, when struck by the blazing thunderbolt, felt the searing heat tear through him, and as the bolt crashed down upon his body, warm blood spilled from his head, flowing in thick streams as his immense frame stumbled away from the force of the blow. In pain and fury, his great form moved toward the distant lands, struggling to remain upright, staggering across the earth toward the mountains and the plain of Nisa, a place hidden in the regions of Phoenicia. The ground trembled beneath his steps, and the skies still echoed with the thunder of his downfall. Finally, with the last of his strength, he reached the low-lying Sabonian marsh, a place of deep waters and shifting ground, and there his massive body gave way to weakness, and he collapsed. The marsh swallowed him, water rising above his limbs until the whole of his body was engulfed, buried beneath the surface, unseen but never forgotten. The waters, still and wide, became his grave, and though time passed, the people remembered that he was there, resting beneath the muddy depths, a silent threat forever trapped under nature's weight. The tale did not end with his fall, for the shadows of his wrath stretched beyond his resting place. In the land of Egypt, another story was told, one that wove together gods and grief. There, Osiris, a god loved by many, was torn apart, not by time or fate, but by the daemon Typhon, who in that land was called by another name, the god Set. With merciless fury, Typhon dismembered Osiris, scattering his body and bringing great sorrow to the land and its people. The pain of this act was deep, and the people of Egypt never forgot. Each year they mourned the loss, remembering the tearing apart of the god who had brought them peace and plenty. In temples and quiet ceremonies, they spoke of him, honored him, and passed the tale to each new generation, holding fast to the memory of that brutal act. Though Typhoon's body lay far away, buried in a distant marsh, his deeds echoed across lands and stories, from the mountains of Phoenicia to the rivers of Egypt. His shadow cast long by the grief he caused and the fire he once carried in his heart.